Hello class, welcome to part 2 of our Introduction to Christian Ethics presentation, The Life of Jesus of Nazareth. So first I'm going to say a word on religious founders, then we will talk about the life of Jesus in brief, or I'd like to emphasize in brief, and then we will review some conclusions. So when studying a religious belief system, it is crucial that we grasp the major life events of the founder of a religion. Why? Well, there are two reasons. One, the religious founder is often the source of the foundational teachings of a religion. Hence, a study of the life of a founder gives the teachings some kind of context. So who is the audience of certain teachings? When were they delivered and how were they delivered? So by studying the life of Jesus, we get a better understanding of his teachings because it addresses many of these questions. And secondly, the life of the founder is normally considered an archetype for emulation. So religious founders usually practice what they preach. So the life of the founder is regarded as the model religious life to be imitated by devotees. So in the case of Christianity, it is not unheard of that Christians strive to be like Jesus, to emulate his life as best they can. Now, not all religions have a founder, but Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism do. So in this course, it is important that we have some understanding of the lives of the Prophet Muhammad, Buddha, and Jesus of Nazareth for the reasons that were just mentioned. So with this in mind, let's talk a little bit about the life of Jesus. Now again, this is the life of Jesus in brief. It is not comprehensive. We are just highlighting a few major life events to help us better understand his teachings. So to begin with, the two gospel accounts that contain some kind of a nativity scene, the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke, emphasize that Jesus came from modest backgrounds. Some would even argue that Jesus came from an impoverished family. And this is a point that actually people like liberation theologians are going to really emphasize, which is something that we'll talk about later in the course. All of the Gospels agree that Jesus at the age of 30 was baptized by John the Baptist, and that after being baptized, Jesus was led into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. And after overcoming Satan's temptations, Jesus begins his earthly ministry. So he gathers a close following of 12 disciples. He travels around the land, healing the sick, the lame, and the possessed. So Jesus is a miracle worker. He converses with enemies and sinners, that is, enemies meaning ideological enemies like the Pharisees and Sadducees, as well as with Roman officials who were the occupiers of Judea at the time. And Jesus also converses with sinners, most popularly tax collectors and prostitutes. And Jesus is a spiritual teacher, a rabbi, who preaches through parables and sermons, which we will read in this class. And in the last week of his life, Jesus challenged the Jewish authorities. He was arrested during Passover. He was crucified by the Jewish and Roman authorities. And 3 days after his crucifixion, all four of the Gospels agree that Jesus was resurrected from the dead, was raised from death. All right, just a few conclusions. Now, there are actually many conclusions that can be drawn from the life of Jesus, but these are just 3 for us to be aware of in the course. So to begin with, as I mentioned before, advocates of economic justice, especially liberation theologians, will frequently refer to the poverty of Jesus. Basically what they argue is that Jesus was born into poverty and therefore he is on the side of people in poverty. Secondly, you may have noticed that in the life of Jesus there is no mention of marriage. That is, Jesus lived a celibate life and invited others to do the same, which will impact Christian attitudes on sexual ethics. And Jesus' willingness to be executed on the cross rather than resist Jewish and Roman authorities will color Christian attitudes on war and pacifism.